It is not death that a man should fear, but rather he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius. Welcome back, Full Metal family, to another episode of the Full Metal Cast. Thank you for tuning in again this week. As you can tell, given the lack of Kit, this week's episode is going to be a little bit lighter all around than last week, where we discussed guns in the news, mental illness, and the government doing what it does best. Make sure you go back and check it out if you're not caught up. As you can see, I'll actually stand up here. Hopefully you can get a better view of it there. Some of the swag I teased from the last couple episodes is now in the works. This is the first shirt design that I want to take pre-orders for, and while there are some small tweaks I want to make to the design, I'll post a picture somewhere around here of what the back looks like. This is just a preview of what's to come. I would love to see these in gyms across the country, pushing our pillar, touch grass, go gym. So keep an eye out on Instagram or Twitter for when the pre-order goes up. I also teased in the last episode as well that I'm going to start posting my reading list. And how I want to do this is in like a story collection on Instagram. And maybe if there's a way to put it on Twitter that's intuitive, I'll do so as well. But I'm also going to start posting my thoughts on books as I finish them going forward in sort of like a shortened book report format. This is just in an effort to continually provide content that is interesting and unique. Another thing I also teased in the first episode is the Black Binder, which contains my personal notes on all types of works from the Unabomber's Manifesto to various anarchist essays to the Zero Draft of the WHO's CA Plus program. I'm still working out a way to share this. I haven't forgot, just sort of teasing that that's to come as well. And finally, before kicking some things off, for anyone that is interested, the prices of our Full Metal Humidors have been slashed on our website. No coupon needed. For those who aren't up to speed or on the fence, the Full Metal Humidors are how I started this whole thing. What they are humidors that are made out of 50 caliber military surplus ammo cans that I have lined with Spanish cedar and have seasoned with humidor solution before shipping out. But they are the toughest, best looking, and most reliable humidors on the market. There is a waterproof seal along the lid that not only keeps your cigars inside dry if you happen to find yourself in or on a lake or a pool, but it also helps retain humidity extremely well. And in a state where the weather goes from extreme to extreme, keeping humidity at a solid level has been very hard for me with a traditional humidor, but not so much with one of those. So, shilling over, want to just touch on those things before jumping in. But our first topic of today is the jack of all trades. The quote that everyone is most familiar with is "A jack of all trades is a master of none." However, this is actually only half of what Shakespeare famously wrote. The full quote actually reads, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one." Now, this isn't to say that the first half of the quote should just be completely ignored if it's uttered on its own, like it typically is today. We surely can't do everything in life at a level that would indicate true mastery. However, we should still strive to learn new things and be able to do many things, even if just at a novice level. For one, this allows us to be useful in more than one setting. So, for example, first aid. Administration of CPR, epinephrine, and other basic medical functions are applicable in many scenarios. You may witness a car crash, someone experiencing allergic reaction, or a kid falling and injuring themselves while outside playing. And these are all common scenarios that happen every day. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be able to do or attempt to do the jobs of experienced, educated medical professionals. However, by knowing just the basic skills, you are equipped to deal with more common injuries that you and those around you are more likely to experience. And in some of those cases, you may be able to keep someone healthy or even alive, depending on the scenario. And in the example of medical, that is just one that I state because I hold it to be a very important one. I carry around a trauma kit in my Jeep at all times. It's actually Velcroed behind the passenger headrest. I can yank it off real quickly if I have to run back to my car if something's going on. It contains 2 tourniquets, many bandages, gauze, a lot of dressings, antiseptic wipes, gloves, obviously, as well as some epinephrine and Narcan as well, given the whole fentanyl crisis going on in our country today. And I'm always constantly expanding, my pack, all the supplies in it, as I want to be more equipped to deal with different sort of scenarios that I may come across as a civilian. But with that in mind, you want to make sure that you are buying reputable or buying from reputable dealers as well. In fact, I have no affiliation to Guerrilla Tactical or the Art and War podcast here, but Guerrilla Tactical went onto the show and broke down why this is important. They use tourniquets as an example here, and how the Amazon Chinese made knockoff cat tourniquets break and lead to people bleeding out. So when you're pricing out what you want, your trauma kit or your med kit, it will get expensive, but just know that those are life-saving materials, and that that expense is more than worth it in that case. But I digress. And like in medical, farming, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical are skills or trades that even a base knowledge will serve us well, given how relevant all of them are in our day-to-day lives. So farming, obviously, we need food to live. Electrical, everything that we use today depends on it. However, the number of individuals who are knowledgeable at any level in these trades, if you will, decreases every generation as we depend on others to make sure food gets to the grocery store, the toilet flushes when you want it to, and the dealership fixes your car when it makes a funny noise. Hell, and you can do all of these things while you never even look away from your fucking TikTok feed. Now, unlike prior episodes,
Get ready, everybody. He's about to do something stupid.
I'm not going to be taking an anti-state approach necessarily with this. And while that is a good motivator to learn these fields, I don't think it's the most important reason to become familiar or knowledgeable in the trades or in physical labor. Like the scenarios I mentioned earlier, when demonstrating why having knowledge in first aid might be applicable, these skills can benefit yourself, your family, and your community as well. You might be able to save money by changing your car's oil, for example, or by fixing a leaky pipe, in your sink or your shower, rather than paying someone else to do it. And with money being tight right now, with inflation and everything going on in the economy, that those savings that you were able to realize by doing the work yourself or for your family would be much better spent, going towards like food, for example, or medical treatment for a sick or injured loved one. Now, it is also reasonable to assume that the cost of services like these and paying someone to do services like these will only continue to become more expensive, not only with inflation, but as less people are knowledgeable in these trades, as kids keep getting pushed to go get college degrees and corporate jobs, as that route is continually sold as the only way to really make it in this world. But it does actually appear that the Wuhan flu kicked off a bit of a shift in this, which is good. The trades not only provide a lucrative career path for those who do not want to do the whole college thing, but they play a huge role in our society as well. The world does indeed need ditch diggers, though I absolutely hate that phrase because it diminishes the trades and hard labor, which are jobs that society depends on and are objectively more valuable than a human resources rep or an administrative assistant or a DEI advocate. And if you think you know a white collar job that is more valuable, send it over and I'll share it during next episode's Q&A segment. I'll debate it with myself or I'll go back and forth. I don't care how we do it, but please, by all means, try to make the argument for a white collar job and we'll have some fun with this. Moving on, though, and like in previous episodes, honestly, I'd like to make the connection to purpose. I hold that being a well rounded individual and always seeking out new things to learn in an effort to mold yourself into a more valuable asset to not only yourself, but to your community naturally would bring a tremendous sense of purpose. And if applicable, think about your dad or his dad. I feel as though my father's generation and all those before his were all very handy and knowledgeable to varying degrees in the trades. And a quick rip through my father's resume will actually reveal he built a fiberglass boat from scratch. He built an entire home theater in his own house. He dug up the septic tank in our backyard and dispatched an obstruction within it. So when our basement started smelling a bit Oh, ripe. He restored a 1961 Cadillac Series 62 convertible he pulled out of a barn in Texas in our home garage. Mentioned that in the first episode. And he restored a rotted out ice boat, just to rattle off a few of his accomplishments. And these don't even count the many hours he spent under or in cars with me as I was working through my own projects, just helping out. And oh yeah, he used to own a business selling phones. Like he wasn't a career tradesman, like or a handyman. He just knew how to do all these things from exposing himself to them throughout his life. And now, what I'm not trying to say is that being a handyman or being able to do all these various tasks makes you a good person, a good father, or that you'll even be happy and feel as though you have purpose. What I'm really trying to get at here is that it really will only help contribute to achieving those feelings. And in this example, it is not enough just to be a father. You have to be wise, you have to be strong, and you have to be an asset to your children and to your family. Now, while I do stand that being a jack of all trades is something you should strive for, you do need to be proficient in at least one particular area. And think about it like this: we all know someone who is incredibly creative, but they just can't really seem to follow through with a given idea, a job, or a project. This person truly embodies the first half of the jack of all trades quote and is essentially useless due to his or her inability to actually see something through to its conclusion. And if you think about it in terms like a football team, you can't fill all the positions on the field with offensive linemen or even a quarterback, for example, or a running back. Pick one. You can't just pick one position and fill all the positions on the field with players who specialize in that one position and expect to win or even to keep it close. This is why specialization is important, and taking this idea and applying it to a more relevant example. An efficient community is comprised of people who are specialized in certain tasks but have a general knowledge about a lot of things related to their day to day. So, for example, football players know that how the game works. They know how to work out, they know how to maintain in physical shape, they know what's required to win a game, but they are all experts in their own specific roles. And so I guess bringing it home to the example of community, everyone has an example of how to feed themselves in like a neighborhood. Everyone knows how to keep up with basic hygiene, hopefully, and perform, upkeep on their properties, mowing the lawn, keeping the gutters clean, etc. But each individual within a neighborhood or a community has their own area of expertise. And if you think about it, you may know, a neighbor who's a car guy. You always see him tinkering on classic cars or his car in his garage or his driveway. And so, therefore, he has expertise and tools that you might be able to lean on when your car needs work done. Someone may work in finance, and so you might lean on him for investment advice. And someone may be a doctor. And so, when one of your kids is sick, you might get her medical opinion or help with treatment. And if I'm your neighbor, first of all, I am so very sorry. And you don't view me as an unstable individual hunting for gnomes in my backyard. You might come to me for advice about firearms or kit because you know I'm autistic, to which I will refer you to a more legitimate source. So maybe that is a bad example. But while this entire segment is primarily focused on the jack of all trades and specialization, it clearly highlights the importance of community at the same time. Because nobody can be an expert in everything, it is important that you have community and that your community is diverse and properly balanced as it relates to specialization. Guntism kicking in here, but I swear this is applicable, so bear with me. If you solely focus on acquiring guns and ammo and kit for that matter, but you can't treat a basic wound or light a fire, build shelter, or navigate long distances on foot, you're simply a loot drop. You have to be a well-rounded individual, and while gun culture today is pushing this sentiment, even if you do become proficient in these areas outside of just shooting, it still isn't enough. And think about it like this: if God forbid you end up finding yourself going toe to toe with another individual or a fighting force, it only takes one shot to put you down. And while, yes, kit, skills, and knowledge serve to reduce the chance of this happening, having a team increases your chances of surviving more than anything else. Not only do more bodies equal more guns, but like the example about community comprised of people who specialize in different skills, your team should be built in a similar manner. Everyone can't be a sniper with a bolt action gun or DMRs, And everyone can't be a medic at the same time either, carrying a ton of medical supplies, weighing everybody down, and so on and so on. Everyone in your squad can perform basic first aid, and they should be able to perform basic first aid, survival, and yes, shooting functions, but each individual will be stronger in particular areas, and that's good. You cater to that. That's how you build community. That's how you build a squad. And that's just like the example I gave of a football team. So zooming back out from, that particular example, this brings us to a bit of an alarming trend today that is related to community, I think, and that is that people are feeling more isolated and lonely. And I'm not sure, and I have no doubt that the past 3 years obviously contributed to this, but I do believe we were already on this path and that the Wuhan flu really only poured gasoline on this fire. But I do think phones probably have something to do with it. But again, I'm not the expert in there. However, after discussing mental illness in last week's episode, it is critical that we find community. Like how we as an early people had tribes and loved gathering around fires at night, we need community now. We are also social creatures. And when we deprive ourselves of this interaction, we see devastating effects, not just on our mental health, but on our physical health. And yes, the last 3 years did actually really prove that. And what's strange to me, at least, is how avoiding human interaction feels like a natural tendency now. So you're at the grocery store, right? And you recognize someone you went to high school with or, was your neighbor or something, but you just put your head down and either turn the other way or rush past or just pretend you don't see them. Or, for example, when you choose to pay more to have food delivered to you, or you choose to do that over actually going into the store or actually picking up the phone and calling a carryout. You would rather pay more to use an app rather than actually picking up the phone and talking to somebody over the phone just for carryout, even. And in these examples, technology has actually made, sourcing sustenance and actual human interaction and communication much easier. But since this episode isn't about phones or the impacts that they've had on us, I won't go deeper down that rabbit hole now. But hopefully, by talking about this, though, I can help someone realize that they are lacking community or that their community has to improve. I seriously am lacking community myself, and I have to be more disciplined in putting myself out there and reaching out to people, as well as going to events where the type of people I'd want to surround myself with will be. That's what it takes to find solid individuals. And do not, I repeat, do not expect to find these people strictly through social media. You're going to find yourself talking to a Fed more likely than not. And a little exercise you can do now is to take an inventory of those you know and communicate with. Can you genuinely say that you have community, or do you just have drinking friends? Do you feel comfortable calling on these people to help when your car breaks down, when the power goes out, or when you're injured? And on top of feeling comfortable asking for such assistance from these people, are you confident in their ability to be effective in the given scenarios? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that when choosing your friends, you need to have a checklist or sit them down for an interview to make sure they fulfill certain needs. You can and should have friends that are just fun to be around. I've always said having fun and enjoying this life is critical. It is just important to be aware of how you're spending your time and who you're spending it with. Naturally, though, you will find that those who you want in your community are more likely than not to promote healthy lifestyles, which, as I have mentioned before, will bring a tremendous sense of purpose and joy. Essentially, what I'm trying to say here is that everything should be enjoyed in the appropriate amounts. Go out, drink, and have fun, but just not every night, not every day, Go to the gym, but not so much so that you isolate yourself. Surround yourself and spend time with well rounded individuals, but don't be so serious about prepping that you are lacking enjoyment in life. So, everything in moderation. But bringing this thing back and wrapping up this topic, just to recap here, recall a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Said another way, excuse me, make a conscious effort to broaden your horizons and learn new things about the world around you so that you can make yourself an asset. Two, take steps to put yourself out there and meet new people in the real world. It's good for your health. And three, be cognizant of how you spend your time and who you surround yourself with. And that's going to wrap up my little monologue, my rambling about the jack of all trades, community, specialization, and so on. But moving right on to the next topic, and I could have tied this in when I touched on how phones and technology contribute to the isolation crisis a little bit earlier on. But dating apps are an entirely different beast that deserve their own segment. And what a beast there are. So I have never been a serial dating app user, I guess, if you will. A little over a year ago, I went through some major life changes, relationship status change, new job, new place, new city I moved to entirely, actually. So naturally, I said, you know what the hell? I will get myself acclimated with the area. I'll download them, I'll see what they're about. Terrible, terrible experience. Hate them, hate everything about them, hate the people I met on them. um, and basically, the TLDR of this segment is like everything else online, dating apps are not a meaningful way to communicate or interact with people. Just touch grass and meet people out in the real world. But I did write down some lessons that I learned during my time on the dating app. So, lesson number one, most of the time you're going to find yourself interacting with ghosts or people just looking to promote their OnlyFans, or they're just straight up soliciting sex, which was crazy. I couldn't believe it. I don't know if these were just feds or cops or people trying to run a sting, just trying to, lock people up or catch people. But I was just floored by the amount of times people tried to exchange money for sex. It was wild to me. And maybe the apps are better at, filtering out the latter two examples there. It has been, probably about a year since I've been on them. Again, I didn't mention this earlier, but I probably only spent about like a month or so on them before I just called it quits because it was just terrible. So maybe they're better. I don't know. Don't want to slander them. Lesson number two, you're gonna have to message someone constantly, often double messaging them to keep the conversation going. And I may get to a little more of that later on here as to why that is. But lesson number three, and this was the big one for me. I could not believe this, but there is a disturbingly large number of people, mostly females, who truly believe in horoscopes, angel numbers, spiritual regression, etc., etc. So if worshiping the stars or printed numbers is your thing, then cool, congrats, you're in luck. However, if you cringe when hearing girls ramble on about the planet Mercury and or three-digit numbers, you're just going to have a bad time. I had a terrible time. Lesson number four, I believe we're on now. Yeah, four. Like social media, the pics you see on dating apps are the absolute best that a person will look. And that's because everyone wants to put their best foot forward naturally. But when you see a feature on an individual, when you're running through their resume or their profile, that may not be physically appealing to you, which is totally fine. You have your own preferences. Even if it's just in one picture, you assume that's the norm. It's gonna be the norm. Lesson number five. Similarly, if you notice something is off while messaging someone, don't chalk it up to something innocuous. In the last episode, we established that mental illness is very real. Uh, I'm not going to go further onto that one. Lesson number six here, and the last one. I'm going to go a little philosophical on you here. The Stoic belief that the desire for a thing is much stronger than the feeling of satisfaction gained from the acquisition of said thing is very much proven in dating apps. And I'm going to elaborate here. Essentially, this is the digitization of the serial dater or someone who loves the chase. And to set the scene, you are swiping through profiles and you come across someone who's attractive. Your heart races, dopamine rush ensues, and so you swipe right. And that feeling right there, that rush is greater than the rush that is received when, sorry, more like if, you actually get the notification saying that you matched with that person. And you likely don't even end up sending that person a message. Thus, the serial swiper is born. And this likely provides a partial explanation to the amount of ghosting that takes place on these apps. Now, so end of my lessons here. Ultimately, though, I was successful at coordinating a few first dates or meetups with people that I matched with on the apps. But never a second, like never. On the flip side, though, if I met somebody at a bar, at a coffee shop, conversation during and after the initial meet was easier. Scheduling a first date was easier and faster, and second dates were actually the norm, not the exception, I found. Now, I'm not saying that, dating apps never work. Few things in this world fall into the buckets of always and never. And I have friends actually who have met their significant other on an app and are married or engaged at the moment. So I know they work. I know people find their people on them, just not for me. And again, just sharing my experience. I'm not telling you give up all hope, never download them. This is just me screaming into the void about my experience with these, and my experience just sucks. And that isn't because all the girls on the apps are awful. The apps just aren't for me. And my real world experience is sort of the body of proof that I lean on to sort of back up that claim. And so, why am I sharing this? A lot of this is pointless, I realize, but really there is a point that if you or anyone out there is finding themselves spending hours swiping on these apps and you're feeling down, don't get upset. They are designed with the intent to make finding a partner easier, but remember that everything in life has a trade-off. No upside can be recognized without sacrificing something. And in the case of the apps, the maximization of potential partners you have the chance of communicating with is the upside, but you sacrifice the benefits of making a first impression through quality face to face interaction the way we always have throughout history. And yes, that is a little bit of evolution posting, but I love science, love evolution. So always going to lean on that side of the equation. And I won't go on another rant about, how comfortable we as a people have become, but this does play into why the apps may appear to be an attractive option. Because we are so averse to rejection now, it is so uncomfortable, but it is also avoidable now simply by not approaching somebody. And the apps make it, that sort of outlet. And so they seem like a perfect solution to many of us, as we may be able to get plugged into somebody without having to face that fear of rejection face to face. However, this prevents us from getting accustomed to approaching and having a conversation with people. And essentially, the apps turn a human interaction into a digital transaction, sort of like how I explained the serial swiper. And it does also stand to reason that the more you use and lean on these apps to connect and communicate with potential partners, you not only will be lacking in confidence, but also the ability to hold a conversation with someone in person. In fact, you won't even consider approaching somebody in person after a long enough time, I feel like, because what's the point? You don't even have to leave your home and even face the fear of rejection if you can just fire it up and start swiping. Now, if you ever do, and this is to kind of encourage you to leave the house here, if you ever do find yourself, nervous to approach someone and talk to them, seriously, just stop. Stop, the catastrophization going on in your mind. Pause and just really think, why are you scared? Don't be afraid to just go up, introduce yourself, drop a comment, and ask some questions. Get a conversation going. You're not going to be physically harmed. I promise you. No one's going to kill you for this. And if they reject you, then guess what? Cool, they're not the right one. And you refined your craft. Maybe you tripped over some words or said something stupid, but that's good. You'll be better next time. But like all things in life, you have to work on it to be good at it. Talking to people is just no different. Now, in the same vein, I do really, really think porn hurts a lot of guys here. And I'm not nearly smart enough to fully go deep on this without gathering the facts and my thoughts. And I'm not going to go down the morality standpoint here either. But Andrew Huberman on his podcast elaborates on it much better than I ever will. So I'm going to leave that to the professionals. I'm really going to leave this short and sweet. But anything that is so addictive and manufactured simply can't be good for our little monkey minds, man. This is Pillar 4 posting again. But all I'll say here is just put it down for a week. See what happens. Don't look at it for a week. Don't touch it for a week. And go to the gym. Go to coffee shops. Go to bars. And challenge yourself to spark conversations with strangers. Just like how dating apps deteriorate our ability and desire to approach people in real life, porn really works the same way. Why even bother with the hassle of going out, talking to somebody, and developing a relationship when you can achieve the same pleasure as the intended end result, essentially, without any effort? And I'm not saying so. I can see this going way out of control here. But I am not saying that your primary driver for entering into a relationship or finding a life partner should be based on sexual gratification. Looks and sex drives do fade, as we all know. However, reproducing is one of our strongest natural instincts, and if that's what gets you out of the house and interacting with real people, then by all means. But just like everything else that I in life and what I mentioned in this podcast, in moderation, please, gents. You will find that when you remove the fake thing that floods your brain with pleasure without having to face rejection, it is much easier to talk to people in the real world. Give it a try. Reject modernity. So on to the Q&A here. Don't have much, but in the last episode, I asked the Full Metal family to send in any songs, drinks, cigars, etc. that they've recently discovered and have been enjoying with others. I was sent the new Super Mario movie soundtrack, um, specifically Peaches and the DK rap. Now, I love DK more than anyone else in this world, and he has always been my main in Smash Bros. Uh, and the soundtrack is objectively good to the movie, but it's just not my speed. So I'm not really going to go down that road or really go into it. But if anyone is looking for musical recommendations, however, might I suggest some rock from the UK group Tiger Cub? I describe them as a royal blood meets Queens of the Stone Age, and as soon as you listen to some of their songs, you'll get exactly what I mean when I say that. But quick rundown of my top three songs of theirs: "Stop Beating on My Heart," "Sleepwalker," and their newest one, "Show Me My Maker." So give them a listen. Let me know what you think. Again, previously I challenged anyone actually to send in any white collar jobs that are more important than trades or blue collar jobs. Um, Not trying to pit, white versus blue here, but just to spark a little bit of a debate. Send them in. Let me know your reason why, and I'll bring them up next Q&A. But that's really going to do it here. A real short and sweet episode, a little bit of a lighter episode. Hopefully that helps break some things up. But thank you for tuning in once again and spending your time. As always, our socials are going to be in the description. We're on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify. Thank you for your continued support and for listening in. Oh, yeah, you can also find all of our episodes on the website as well. I post the latest one right on the homepage. And then our Full Metal Humidors also on the website, and look forward to the shirts. I'll make sure to send out an announcement in a video as well as on Instagram and Twitter when we are going to be taking pre-orders. But until next week, continue to sharpen your mind and your body. Go out and build community. And for the love of God, touch grass. Put down the porn and talk to real people, guys. And as always, and most importantly, stay metal. Thank you.